Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
Welcome to Merryn Talks Your Money, the personal finance edition of Merryn Talks Money. In these bonus podcasts, and yes, they are bonuses and you are lucky, we talk about the best strategies for making the most of your money. I'm Merryn Somerset Webb, and with me today is senior reporter and Money Distilled author John Stepek. Hi, John.
Hi, Merryn.
Good to have you here to talk about houses just a little bit more. For those who are new to Merryn Talks Money, we did a personal finance series focusing on only how to buy houses in the UK earlier this year. We put out 8 episodes in total, answering questions about freeholds versus leaseholds, about shared ownership properties, good idea or bad idea, by the way, whether new builds are a good idea or a bad idea, that kind of thing. We thought we covered everything, but of course, in the end, we did not actually cover everything. So as the episodes have been released, we've received emails and a couple of comments with new questions, and we thought we would dedicate our final personal finance episode before the summer to addressing a couple of those questions. So to do that, we have brought back the absolutely brilliant Paula Higgins, who is CEO of HomeOwners Alliance. The mission of HomeOwners Alliance, by the way, is to champion the interests of Britain's homeowners and to provide unbiased, practical advice, which is, of course, exactly what we need here. Paula featured on our episode on new builds. We learnt a lot then, didn't we, John? John was actually outraged by half of that, weren't you?
I think that's the angriest I've been on the podcast.
You are still recovering from, it was estate management fees that really sent you off, wasn't it?
That was just over. That was outrageous, actually.
Yeah. I'm amazed you didn't know about it.
I'm hoping for more outrage.
I thought you knew about all that appalling stuff. You will get more outrage today. Paula, thank you very much for joining us today.
Yes, nice to be here. I expect you will get more outrage today.
Yeah, I was going to ask you to promise that up front, but it's not really necessary, as it'll be there. Okay, so here we go. Here's our first question. And actually, this is a question that I suspect an awful lot of people will want to hear the answer to. It's from someone called Jonathan. My father died last year, and I'm in the process of looking at retirement apartments for my mother. I thought it would be a really useful area for you and John to discuss. It appears you have to sell these types of properties back to the company, often at a loss. So would people in this age bracket, i.e. downsizers, be best to buy on the open market, or should they buy, I think what he's saying is, should you buy retirement homes at the lure of away day trips, yoga classes, and ongoing care? Is that worth the investment? Now, I know what I think about this, having looked at this a few times over the years, and I think one of the things we said about shared ownership was run for your life, didn't we? Yes. I think I'd feel a little like that about retirement properties, but maybe I'm wrong. Actually, I'll tell you what, before we ask you, Paula, what the answer is, let's ask John what his instinct is. John, should Jonathan buy a retirement apartment for his mother?
Well, I mean, my instinct is probably not. I suspect the service charges are very expensive, and I suspect it's hard to sell on. But I'm not an expert on this, so I'll be interested to know if my gut feeling is correct or not.
Okay, you know, John, there's quite a lot going around at the moment about whether you should go with your gut feeling or with your expert thoughts on various things, but maybe we'll come back to that later. Paula, should Jonathan buy a retirement apartment for his mother?
Well, his mum might like that retirement living, so his mum might think differently. But to be honest, they're expensive to buy, they're expensive to live in, and he might still be paying for it after she goes. So I've got a long list of reasons. So first of all, high purchase prices. On average, they are 17% more than a standard new build, which of course we know is expensive anyways, but you get a lot of extra services.
Okay, question. Yeah. On the high purchase price.
Yes.
Now, the purchase price is a function of what people are prepared to pay and a function of the net present value to a degree of the service charges that you might pay, right? So how can it be that they would be higher than the price of an average new build?
Well, the reason why they're getting you to buy into the luxury lifestyle. So you've got to think about all the services you're going to get, the lovely classes and this pool and all that sort of thing. So they really do sort of entice you in, and or we'll find that they'll want you to come along and have lots of champagne and lots of chats with them, and you're buying into the community and the lifestyle. So they are generally more expensive than a new build on the same street.
Ooh, sounds like a timeshare already. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing is that actually they also drop in value. So around half of the new build homes, when they go to sell, actually go down in value. And they're also really difficult to sell. So according to Age UK, 150,000 retirement properties are actually vacant because they can't sell. So you've got lots of issues there that after it happens. So, and then we were not even having started on things like event fees, exit fees, service charges. That's
okay. So let's go back a little bit. So I'm Jonathan's mother. I buy this retirement flat. I buy it new. So it's brand new. I move into it. I have to pay service charges, event fees, all sorts of things along the way. I die. Sorry, Jonathan. Jonathan inherits the flat, but of course, Jonathan can't live in it because Jonathan is not old or not old enough, right? So Jonathan says to himself, right, well, I better sell this thing. But while he's looking into selling it, he's continuing to pay the service charges, right?
That's right.
What would an average service charge on, say, a standard one bed retirement flat be?
According to, we've calculated average service charges that can really range, but say you're talking about, say, £500-600 a month.
Okay.
And that is an ongoing cost for Jonathan after his mother passes away or maybe has to move elsewhere. And then also he might even end up having to pay council tax as well. And it could even go into double council tax if it's an empty home type thing. And it's really tricky. They stay on the market for a lot longer. So he's got that outgoing cost, which I think his mother would be horrified to think that he's paying.
But I suppose the question then is, why do they stay on the market so much longer, given that everything should have a clearing price, right? And there are lots of people who would like to live in retirement homes. It sold perfectly well first time round. Why is it not selling second time round?
Well, you might like to live in a retirement home first time around when everything's brand spanking new. But second time around, you might decide you don't want to go and live in a place where there are people older than you or that it hasn't been well maintained. And then also because it's very hard to sell on because, as you say, that there's an age restriction. And if they haven't been maintained, and also you get an independent solicitor. So a lot of times the first time you buy it, you might be getting their solicitor. But when, an independent solicitor start looking at small print, they'll look at the service charges, which might have gone up in time.
Yeah.
They'll look at the exit fees again. So they'll look at the resale value. And then you might think, actually, it's not a good idea. Maybe I'd rather move somewhere else.
Exit fees?
Exit fees. So yeah, that's another thing that, up front, sometimes in the marketing, they will eventually disclose them, but they're often 1 to 2% of the sale price. It can be as high as 35%. So whatever price you sell for, Jonathan might have to give 35% back to the
Here he goes. Here he goes. You got him. You just said,
you just said 35%?
We've seen 35%. So sometimes it's like, maybe 4% a year type thing.
4% a year? Hang on. What do you mean 4% a year?
They'll have the capped.
Per year of residence?
Yeah, a year of residence. It might be. So we've seen like 4% a year, but then capped after 5 years type thing. We've also seen exit fees, which is based on the purchase price, and not even the sale price. We get people to our site all the time with these sort of horror stories. We've also seen cases where people can't sell because it's limited to the people who are managing the property or the freeholder. And they say, well, no, you've got to get it up to a good standard for us to sell it. And so they have to then go and put in new kitchens and things like that because they haven't really maintained it. So it can be really, really tricky, which is why, going into it, people might not want to buy a secondhand retirement home.
And the freeholder or management company can veto a buyer?
They can, in the fact that they've got no incentive really to get you to sell quickly because they're still getting the service charges, and actually they're getting service charges, but they're not actually having to service the property or that sort of thing. So
so the incentive for them is for you not to sell.
Well, you said that, not I. But it can be very tricky. So it can be really tricky, and you can't sublet it, so you can't rent it out. You can't go and move in there yourself if you want to. It's really tricky. It's maybe if Jonathan, would like his mother to have that lovely sort of luxury lifestyle living, you can look at sometimes renting instead, which has another set of tax complications and things like that. But that might be another option for him.
Jonathan, I think you have a fairly clear answer there that yes, you might want to do this, but you would have to do it with very, very, very open eyes and accept that you might be left for a reasonable amount of time with a liability.
And you're probably leaving that for your children, to deal with.
Yeah. I mean, it's so interesting, isn't it? Because if you think about that effectively as a permanent debt, in the same way that we've seen these awful troubles over the years. We haven't talked about timeshares during this series, but one of the appalling things about timeshares, of course, is you inherit the timeshare. The timeshare is worthless. It's effectively a stream of income that you have to pay out. You can't sell it. You can't get rid of it. But it's part of the estate. So if you want to inherit the rest of the estate, you have to take the timeshare. And so obviously I'm not calling them equal, but there's an element of that in there.
Yes. We say sometimes if you are thinking of it, that you might want to look at a flat in a mixed development. So then at least you don't have the restrictions on selling. The price will hopefully hold a little bit more, and you won't cause this headache for your children.
And also, make sure you get your own lawyer to look at this stuff. Don't use somebody else's lawyer.
Well, it's also so interesting, isn't it? The idea that people first time round buy with an in-house solicitor.
Yeah, and it's hard because the people they're not the ones selling. So you can't really go and fight it because the people trying to sell it are not the ones who signed the contract in the first place.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
Wow.
Moving on. Another question we got, and this is an interesting one, and actually I have some experience here, interestingly, is about buying a house via auction. So Uzma wrote in with a story about how her family almost bought a home through auction recently, but the whole process filled her with dread and unease, for good reason, I'm guessing. She wanted to know if there's tips or things that a buyer should know if they are considering buying via auction. Paula, what do we need to know if we're going to go buy a house via auction?
Well, that's a good question. There are two types of auction, and one is getting more and more popular. So there's the traditional auction, which generally you need to have the cash to buy. So it happens so quickly. You're committed on when the hammer comes down, and you need to have the cash there, and you probably need to know what you're doing. So,
do you have to pay 100% immediately if you win a house at auction, or is it a deposit?
No, you have usually like 28 days. So you put down 10%, and you're committed. You've exchanged contracts. So you really need to look at the legal pack quite carefully, know exactly what you're getting. You've got to be a really savvy buyer, really, because it's your money down the line. But the other type of auction, which is becoming more and more popular, and it's a big growth area, is something called modern method of auction. And this is where it's more tricky because you've got more like 56 days to exchange and to complete. So it means that you can actually probably get a mortgage. And estate agents are starting to prefer this. So there's more money to be made here. And this is like an online action, so a bit like an eBay. So you can go and you can see it there. You can put your bid in. It usually is open for 30 days. It works in the same thing. But, the main difference with this is that the buyer will be having to pay the fee. So there's a non-refundable reservation deposit, which can be about £6,000. So that's quite a lot of money.
Sorry, what's that deposit for?
The deposit for securing the property. So if you win your online auction, you put down a deposit of £6,000, and that will go to the estate agent and to the auctioneer. That is non-refundable. So if you decide to pull out, or you can't get a mortgage in time, or that the legal pack is wrong, there might be things there, there's no reason to get out. Or even sometimes the seller can mess you about.
Yeah, but if you win at auction, legally you can't pull out, can you? I mean, you're committed. Even with this modern
you just
method.
£6,000.
Okay, but you wouldn't be legally obliged to pay for the house.
No, because no. So if you do, so say you put it down and then you decide to, and sometimes it might be worthwhile to pull out. But what's really frustrating is sometimes people put their money down and then they find out there's information in the legal pack that might be incorrect, or maybe the sellers mess them about and they can't get their money back. And also that £6,000. So you really need to the big thing is to take that money into account into the price you want to pay for the property.
Right.
Because also for the modern method, that £6,000 goes a part of the price of the property. So you'll have to pay stamp duty on that. So that's something to think about. So you've got to be really careful. And this is where if you're a seller, you might think, selling is by modern method of auction is good, but there's a lot more commission being made off these properties and someone's going to have to pay for them.
All right. Well, that's something to think about. John, would you buy a house at auction?
It's something I would consider. I'd be very, very intimidated by it low. And I think the other problem with buying at auction is you probably need to have a half-decent team of people who, like somebody that knows what they're doing to actually see the house first. I'm definitely not competent enough at DIY and things like that.
No, I mean, you'd have to take down a surveyor and do you have to do all the usual checks before you did it, wouldn't you? Although you always wonder why on earth a house is coming to auction. What's gone so horribly wrong? It ends up auction in the first place.
Yeah, Yeah, it could be probate. It could be also maybe it's a particular house you want to get on a certain street or whatever. So you're right. If you get your surveyor, get a builder along. We'd also probably say that look at the legal pack. Maybe get your solicitor up front to look at that legal pack to make sure that's all correct and everything's in there, because that's what you don't want to go wrong, that there's something missing there. Maybe it's a non-standard construction type or something like that.
Paula, why is a probate house more likely to go to auction? Just because the heirs want it over quickly?
Yes, it's just, to get it done quickly, really. And sometimes you might not have all the paperwork, because you don't really know what's happening with what's happened with the probate. So it makes more sense that to sell it. So you can get, good deals. And it could be that, you can get quite a gem. And especially if you're looking in a particular area and if you're a savvy buyer. But, if it's a traditional auction, you probably need to have all that money in the bank ready to spend on it. Yeah. And it's a bit worrying with the other type of auction. If you're relying on a mortgage and if you get your mortgage refused, then you're a bit stuck.
Yeah, in a lot of trouble. Okay. All right. Well, talking about being in a lot of trouble, we got several other comments asking us for information about how a buyer can protect themselves from expenses if the sale falls through. If something goes wrong, what if something goes wrong before you exchange, or what if something goes wrong between exchange and completion? Is there any way to cover yourself?
So there is something called home buyers protection insurance, which is actually a good little piece of insurance. I don't really like, sometimes we're a bit overinsured, but we do know that 1 in 3 properties fall through. People can pull out right up to the point of exchange. So you can get something that where it will cover your out-of-pocket costs, so your survey costs, your mortgage arrangement costs, your survey fees. So that sort of thing can be quite useful. But you've got to make sure you get it at the right time. So you can't go and get it after you've done your survey. And it also is not going to cover you if you yourself decide to change your mind. It's more if there's been gazumping, if the seller changes their mind, if the mortgage lender says they won't lend on it, those sorts of things.
Okay. All right. And what would that cost?
Well, we have it on our site. It starts at £74, which is pretty good value. And the average claim out is about £975. So it's not bad, but there's different sort of levels depending on what level of protection you want. You can get it on our site, but also you can actually sometimes get it through your solicitor or your mortgage broker.
Yeah, £74 doesn't sound that much if you've got a 1 in 3 chance of the deal falling through,
Yeah, and I think particularly with getting a survey done, so that's why a lot of people have stopped getting a survey done, because that is out-of-pocket costs, and particularly if you're first-time buyers, you're talking about, a couple of £1,000, which is, your money's tight, so it is something
that you can drop
to do.
John, more insurance?
Yeah, I can see the potential value of that. The only minor thing is that if it's not covering you pulling out, then perhaps it's less likely to happen, because a lot of the time it's you find something awful in the survey or something like that. But I think, it's a complicated process buying a house, and particularly with chains and all the rest of it. So, yeah. Probably, I would definitely think about it, put it that way.
Yeah, I think if it's when you're buying, because you've got all that out-of-pocket costs, there is something called home seller's insurance. And I think that is not particularly good value, because, it might be sort of, you'll get your conveyancing costs covered. Yeah. That could be just a few £100 or whatever like that. So, but I think the buyer's protection insurance is pretty good deal.
Okay, good. Particularly as the market feels kind of fragile at the moment, right? Yeah. How does the market feel to you at the moment, Paula? Housing market in general?
I think there's a lot of stock on there, and they're saying that the prices are starting to reduce. People are being more realistic, but I just don't think people are feeling that healthy.
Yeah, we feel like that too.
And also, it's actually interesting. There's something out this week saying that actually the applications for renovations is at the lowest in 10 years. So planning applications. Really? So people are actually not feeling very rich to renovate or to extend their home, and that's.
I'm going to finally be able to get a joiner in to do the cupboards in my bathroom. That would be amazing.
Might very well.
Yeah. Sorry, John, interrupted you. About to say something more interesting and non-domestic.
No, not at all. But it's decoupled from the number of sales, which is really unusual. I was looking at it earlier this week. It's an intriguing gap. And yeah, it might be because people are poorer, or it might be because the amount of stock has gone up, and so better quality properties, kind of move-in ready properties are being sold. I don't know, but it's definitely an interesting one. Or just the costs.
All right. Well, we will watch that one. We'll watch that one. John and his correlations. Paula, thank you so much for joining us today. We will definitely be talking to you again.
Oh, lovely. Lovely to speak to you both.
Thanks, Paula.
Thanks for listening to this week's Merryn Talks Your Money. If you like our show, rate, review and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. Also, be sure to follow me and John on X or Twitter at MerrynSW and John_Stepek. This episode was produced by Sam Asadi, production support and sound design by Moses Andam. Questions and comments on this show and all our shows are always welcome. Our show email is merrynmoney@bloomberg.net.